Yeah.
Okay, we are back in Senate Institutions, April 22nd. And we're speaking with, or hearing from, Attorney John Gray regarding the Capitol Bill H 494. And we're going to start with the amendments discussing or regulating, defining the cash portion. And then we're going to go to the regular bill. Thank you.
Long time no see. John Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. So what you see here is from this morning, a proposed amendment to the capital bill. And sometimes you'll see this in the form of a strike all right, because you're tweaking things all throughout the capital bill. At least until about an hour ago, all of the changes proposed were within exclusively section 19, which is your cash fund section. So what you see proposed here is a single instance of amendment. That's why it's 3 pages long rather than 30 pages long. And so I won't bother you with the boring lead-in language, but amending that section 19 by striking out section C, which is your FY26 cash authorizations from that capital infrastructure subaccount, and inserting a new subsection C. All changes against what is in the capital bill as passed the House are shown in highlight. It's not highlighted here. This is what you received from the House. So you can see major maintenance. You have a reduced figure here, 861. This is what the House passed. You may recall that the GovRec was a higher figure. But jumping down to the actual changes, these occur on starting on page 2. So the first
These are only amendments. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
So all of the cash fund appropriations are not in this. This is just the changes.
This will show all of the cash fund appropriations because it shows that subsection C of section 19, and anything that is not highlighted.
Okay, so it has the 250s, the two.
Exactly. Anything that's not highlighted came across from the House.
Okay.
The sole change you'll see to existing cash fund language as passed by the House is for that Windsor County Courthouse. That reduction from 8 million to 6.9 million. If I was following the conversation earlier this afternoon correctly, you may be proposing to authorize an FY26 bonded dollars in the amount of 1.1 million to result in a total figure of 8 million for this Windsor County Courthouse, in which case this amendment would need to be changed so that it's 2 instances of amendment. You would amend likely section 2, which is your state buildings, to provide an FY26 1.1 million to this particular project in bonded dollars, assuming that you can find that somewhere, which is what you guys have tasked Commissioner Manoli with tracking down, where you could find those that won't work.
Okay, I'm just trying to follow because I expected that to be in the same order as the spreadsheet. Is it?
Should be in the same order.
Okay, so the courthouse, there's a lot of stuff between the court, maybe it just.
Okay. So what you may be seeing is that section 19 I will say that I had looked at the spreadsheet less than anyone because I just look at the bill and that's where I think about language being, but I realize that in every room people talk almost exclusively about the spreadsheet. In the spreadsheet, section 19 is a column.
Yeah.
Right? It just shows you cash. Because it's a column, what that means is its organization will track the organization of a bill as a whole, meaning that, the rows you have are specific sections, like here's the BGS section, here's AHS, here's the judiciary. Your cash is just a column, so it's going to be organized in a way where what you see is divided basically by the entity to whom the appropriations are made. So it may not naturally follow, although I'm guessing that at least the initial projects look pretty.
Well, yes, but then there's a grant for recovery residence purchase, $250,000. But that might not be in here.
Oh, okay. So this is the new language. These are the people that we were talking about this morning, or sorry, this afternoon.
Yes.
The recovery residence is here on page 3. That's subdivision 13. I will just say, I realize you're trying to sort through the alignment of these two pieces. They will align once we know exactly what's happening here. It's just that Scott and I haven't got together because we haven't known what's final yet.
Okay, but the goal is to have everything in the column M, in this section?
The spreadsheet will show anything that is here.
Okay,
The way in which it may look different is that it's purely a column.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the new pieces that you see are in 8, you have to the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets for that Bennington Veterans Incubator Farm at the Vermont Veterans Home. This was a request, in discussions with appropriations to direct this to Agency of Agriculture. I know that earlier there's some discussion about whether this would go to the Veterans Home outright or whether it would go to Association of, but this was the proposal, is to go to Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets for this incubator farm.
and then the idea is that the agency would know where to.
Send the money, yeah.
And-
In any of these cases, the reason that we route through a state entity rather than directly appropriating or authorizing to a particular entity is basically for trackability and ensuring that people comply with standards. When I spoke with Scott this morning, part of what we talked about is that the significance of that tracking may be difference between cash and bonded, right? Bonded has more restrictions. For instance, general obligation bonding, we're talking about capital expenditures, so things of a longer term. Cash might have different conditions attached, but our understanding from speaking with Emily and JFO is that they want to maintain the same trackability and conventions. So try to route things through state entities so that you can ensure that the dollars are going to exactly the projects that you want. And that's why you have all of this.
That makes sense.
And so sometimes you'll have clauses or line items that have a bunch of prepositions, and it seems super annoying because it's to this entity, for a grant to this entity. But there's a reason behind the madness, I would say.
Yeah, this isn't annoying. It's helpful.
Maybe it is solely annoying to me. Sure. But there are reasons. So 9, 10, 11 are your 3Bs, and this is maintaining the form, the same dollar figures as were presented at the GovRec. So 1.1 million for that project in Bennington, and then 1 million for each of the Berry and Brattleboro projects. And this is against, as I know it's like for you guys, the 2 million that had been addressed in the budget act, in just a generic line item that says for housing and related infrastructure. This is returning essentially to the GovRec, and providing 3.1 million cash for the 3Bs.
Okay.
Sub 12 is kind of your most built out for the detailed language of the cash authorization. So this is to DHCD for that grant to the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, support that site study. It's focused on, it's not just flood mitigation, which I know early discussions have been exclusively about flood mitigation. This includes economic development, parking, housing, and flood mitigation, which makes some sense if you think about the parameters of those parcels, as we talked about before. One of these is outright a parking lot. So for that 1.6 acre parcel at 87 State Street, that's your federal building. Parcels at 89 State Street and 42 Court Street, parking. And this is the language that was received through discussions with appropriations.
Okay.
13, this is one of the ones we talked most about needing to change potentially the entity to which this is appropriated, and also specifying to whom the grant is made.
Mm-hmm.
And if you require this level of detail. So I think some of that is being worked out outside of the room, and potentially Scott may have updates on these pieces.
Perfect time then for me to come back.
Okay.
So my apologies for interrupting, John, again, for Scott Moore doing fiscal. Emily Byrne, who is the deputy chief fiscal officer, knows information about this. Problem is right now she is testifying in appropriations, so it's hard to pull her away. So I went over and I talked to Catherine Benham, who is the chief fiscal officer, and her suggestion, not knowing about this project necessarily, is that she agrees with Commissioner Manoli in that if it's for the purpose of buying the building, it makes sense for it to go to BGS because BGS is in charge of owning the buildings and leasing the buildings. So the appropriation to BGS makes better sense than the Department of Health.
Okay.
And there was some discussion about specifically what this is for, which we had some information. Senator Lyons, Senator Norris had some discussions in appropriations. I guess there was testimony yesterday, but I haven't had a chance to listen to that in the 10 minutes I was gone. So there's some of that background that I don't necessarily have, other than Catherine did the suggestion that BGS does make sense because they own buildings. But we can, can get that language changed here, and if it needs to be changed again in appropriations, to make that amendment. We can do that to give them that number of the 250, so that's,
Okay, let's at least go to change Department of Health to Department or Agency.
Building values and general
But-
services.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then maybe it doesn't need to say St. Albans, probably should say recovery residents, but let's let appropriations. Either
funded to them, they can,
tell it today, or they can figure out if they get the language and it's not exactly.
So two BGS for purchase of a building.
Why don't we just say purchase of a building, yes,
For
instead of
recovery.
grants, yes.
Okay, and leave out St. Albans.
Well, I was just thinking we might want to leave out St. Albans, but I don't know, it might be
My-
important to someone.
my
So,
understanding from conversations they were having in appropriations is that there is a building in St. Albans. There was a letter that was sent to appropriations that had more specific details. But I don't have copies of that or anything, so it's a matter of you giving them out of appropriations to talk to us, but they're in the middle of going through all the budget testimony.
okay, so we might be able to find it on their website. I'm not suggesting that we necessarily do that now, but we might be able to find it on the appropriations website.
Yeah, this area is.
Huh? Oh, cool. All right. Oh, you're back. Let us finish this section and then short, okay. And we're changing, Commissioner, on that number one line, says 13 to the Department of Health, we're changing that to VGS. And we're, not saying that it's a grant, just say for the purchase. And then we don't yet know St. Albans and recovery residents. We don't yet know that those are the appropriate.
And I'm just explaining to the committee, I spoke to Catherine because Emily currently is in that.
Catherine likes me.
Catherine suggested that it makes sense that, like you had mentioned, VGS owning buildings would make sense for VGS to be the person.
Right, but if it's for a third part, we can figure that
Yeah.
out later. We may have to clean that up as we learn more.
Yes, and
Thank you.
expect so, but it'll be in your beta.
I just found you 250 now. I'm just kidding.
No, that's funny. Well, we don't know who you're gonna be offending, so.
The remaining items here, I think there was general comfort with earlier. So your subdivision 14, Forest Parks and Recreation for purchase of a fire apparatus.
Yes, the language is good. I still wanna know what the fire apparatus is, but
Like
that's
what
not for
covered
you
by
to
that, yeah.
figure.
15, we talked about this, that Lake Champlain Walleye Association. And then 16 is, as we talked about, routing through Department of Public Safety for the Vermont Rural Fire Protection Task Force for that dry hydrant program.
Yep,
And that's the extent of the amendment. I'm understanding that there will be some changes. And like I mentioned, if you have found or you're gonna do 1.1 million additional in bonded dollars for this project, the Windsor County Courthouse, the next form of this amendment you would see would have two instances of amendment. One would be amending section 2 to make that change in FY 26, providing 1.1 million. And then potentially pulling out, yeah, there may be other sections touched depending on where that 1.1 million is found.
yeah, and if that 6.9 goes back to 8, it doesn't need to be an amendment, right?
As I was understanding it, you couldn't find other cash. You were
Oh.
looking for bond.
So far. But
So-
I'm just,
Yeah, theoretically, if you found the cash,
yeah,
that's correct.
okay,
You could just stick with the section 18.
okay. And so you have to leave at 4, so,
Yes.
Commissioner, do you mind if we just get more information from him and then you tell us what you
Madam
found?
Chair,
Or-
it is your committee and I'm here to serve.
All right, well, I just want everybody to be comfortable. So what we have still from you is just the general, the overall
Oh, sure. If you want,
language.
if you want
If,
to,
if there's any changes to that, that would be good to know.
the extent of the changes as I understand the requests are everything that I just showed you. I
right.
know that we discussed more on Friday, but my understanding from this morning is that the things we discussed Friday are not in play anymore. So, if you have an appetite to change any of the policy sections, that would be helpful to know. Because as you saw right now, the amendment is just 3 pages and it just touches the cash fund. All that it's doing is creating funding some additional projects. That's all that's happening in the amendment. If you envision something beyond that, I need to know.
I'll just glance through mine. Does anyone have any concerns that we want to talk about? That you want to talk about? Drinking water stuff. Feasibility study for the reentry facility,
Revealed.
okay? Bennington Battle Monument. That's. I think fine, I think what I have here is just explanations, because we transferred the funding from one.
We allowed for, and a slightly expanded line item between what we had last time, increasing for maintenance.
Yeah, we did the charts, the financing
Yes.
assessment, which was a big yay. Any permits required to transfer? I just, I did get that answer.
It's the Randall Meadow.
Yes, and there weren't any permits, or there were minimal permits. It is my recollection. Not attention. So the notes I have are Constitution House, we're fine with that. Oh, and the cutting cemetery wall, I drove by it yesterday, so I know more about it, but, that's a whole conversation. We don't have time to do it. So I am good, actually, with the
Cool.
existing language, so this is, last chance if you have. Do you want to look at that one more time?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
Cool.
And
Yes.
I guess we still have just the amendments to go, so that's not bad.
Yeah, and whatever you guys,
And
fall out.
H50, but that
Yes.
can be another day.
I can do it now if you want me to. Depends on your.
How fast? Yeah, because we talked about that today.
The language.
Actually, no, I'm sorry, that was the other bill. So you know what, let's
Okay.
do that another time, just so that we're
Okay, yeah.
thinking
Yep.
clearly, not doing too much. Thank you.
Sure. I don't know who's. Jumping in?
Oh, no, I've been there.
I think I'm going back.
Welcome.
Yeah. We eagerly greet you.
Oh, you greet me, but will you say goodbye to me nicely? No.
You just got here.
No, it was,
Okay.
so in looking at your spreadsheet, looking at cash flow, looking at some areas of increases, I'm gonna go beyond BGS, so have grace and I appreciate that. So the first comment, the House added $525,000 for Bennington Monument to put up a fence, an additional fence. We already have a fence there. We're already maintaining the property.
It's not what it's for. It's reallocating the fence that was actually allocated for to design the project to start the restoration.
So we already have a semi-design and a cost estimate on the project. I actually have that in my briefcase.
Right, this would be the phase one of the three phases that they've already come up with to actually review the design of the project. So it's not rebuilding the fence. It's phase one of that timeline that you've seen, just three phases.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the change that you did. We were anticipating a need to cover and protect as we do the long term of $5 million. And that's why we didn't put in the capital bill, hoping to get historic preservation. I don't know what's in your bill. I don't know how we would accomplish it with the conservation. We maintain that site with historic preservations. I do know that when we estimated it, and I'm not here, I only have just so much information.
Yeah.
But when I don't know, have you ever seen these estimations on this? So the soft cost, this is the total, I don't know if you've ever seen that. There's a very delicate phased approach to the restoration of
Yeah.
of the monuments.
Um,
So I'm not sure, I haven't looked at your language, I don't know what you expect us to do with 525,000. So what I will say to the committee is I looked at the list, not looking at your language, that is the number I identified. Do you want me to continue?
Explaining that one? or
No,
going
it's
to-
going to my next item.
Okay,
Once you do that.
although I don't know
yeah.
what your conclusion is, just on that.
I
Why do you
went
think
back
it would
and
be less?
so I went back and I looked for $1.1 million or more.
Yeah,
Based on covering the hole for, White River Junction. Looking at the 27 and looking at other items that may have been added that we haven't testified on. So I'm really giving you additional testimony.
okay,
The first item that came up was Bennington.
okay,
The house put in 525,000. I understood from the house side it was to do fencing. We BGS understand they put it in there, but we already have fencing there. We already have something in process and we should be looking at the longer term for Bennington. So I am saying to this committee, I suggest if it were the house language, I'm not sure if I'd be able to spend that money to do what they wanted. So it's for you to consider.
so would you need to use part of that money?
We weren't planning on doing anything. I think that's the issue. The administration and BGS were not advancing this particular project at this time because we've asked Historic Preservations to try to get some federal grants because it's a $40 million project. And we have in place, set aside the rainstorm, we have fencing, we're mowing, and we're maintaining the structure the best we can. The reality of the monument is we've got to enclose it, and we've got to dry it out. And we've got to come to a preservation plan for that monument.
Well, now there's other plans too, but.
Well, apparently, and I'm not aware of those plans.
Oh,
I guess that's what I was gonna ask, is what was your understanding, Senator Plunkett, about what that 500 and something thousand? was
So
about?
this was the request. It's going to ACCD. Where we had spoken to Laura Trichman about it. There was 419,000 left over from the fencing from before. That was appropriated BGS. It hasn't been used. That will be reallocated to this project. So it's going from fencing for the Bennington Monument to fencing plus this other design.
And is it just gonna sit there? Because you would do the work, right? You would do the work. I mean, you would know whether you're gonna be doing that work. And is it just Laura protecting her monies?
I can't,
That's a whole
Well-
realm that I can't get into, and I'm surprised there wasn't a conversation already.
so I will follow up by tomorrow morning. I will have a better understanding of that for you, Senator, because right now we're just guessing. We're going back and forth.
Well, right, you know, and.
You have
I appreciate
information
that.
I don't have, and I don't.
Do you recall a timeline? Because there was a timeline with phase one, phase two, and phase three. Phase one was $500,000. Phase two was 5 million to 10 million.
I'm not recalling it right now, but I promise you, I will have my memory refreshed by tomorrow morning.
That's what this is for, that it can go and
So
go right ahead.
one of the items you still may want to consider.
and that, can I just say, so there's a reallocation, right? And that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
There's a reallocation of 419,000.
Because the fencing project is done,
Yes.
and so I don't need to get into the details,
I just want to make sure you noticed the
Well,
because we
reallocation.
offered it,
Okay,
Right.
Oh.
And my thing is this. Is
because.
that if the money's just gonna sit there. And we know we're gonna spend $40 million on it. We're not taking that money and just not gonna be able to do anything with it, but if it's just sitting there. We have other places we can use it, and we know we're gonna get to that $40 million.
If it's not gonna be used, part of it, they do have to rebuild some of the fence. But if it's not gonna be used, then yeah, it should be used.
So what I don't know is if my design team had a conversation with the
Right.
historic preservationist, and I will follow up on that. I was not informed about that. So I will. So we propose the reallocation of the remaining balance to the bottom line because the original project was done.
Okay.
What I'm hearing you say is not reallocate that money and you gave them additional money to start this proposal.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm sitting here again, this was not, when I'm looking at my tasks
Yeah,
and the work that my employees do, this was not on our list. Therefore, I thought you were supporting the House's proposal of the 525, and you may be. It is an item you can consider. But I only got 4, and I think it's gonna take us a little bit to
no,
get to.
4 is good. Okay.
So then the cultural grants, the facility grants, I appreciate the House and the Senate increasing the recommendation from 250 up to 300. I am going to say with someone who manages the majority of these projects, it's sustainable at 250. And if you want to consider bringing that back to our recommendation, and you've got 2 options, you can get 300,000 in 28 if you want, and you can get 300,000 in 27. I would not, I would keep the ag one at the 300,000 as, was recommended. These grants go out, it takes these communities quite a while to get their work done. It's a pretty aggressive, but it's a long-term project. It does good. By taking 50,000 out of each one of those programs, you're not gonna hurt the intent of the program. And I think you have an option to consider committee. You can hit both years, which would be 600,000, or you could hit 27. And then if you want to replenish it, because there's money to reallocate next year, you can.
If we're gonna do that, I would wanna just do 26, not 27. What's the amount of,
So you went up, so if you go to section 5. And it's all bonded dollars, so if you went to section 5, you increased line 44 through line 51.
yeah,
Each of those items by $50,000
yeah,
in both years.
but so for each year, it's 300,000.
For each year, it would be 300,000. Or should I say the House increased those items and you currently have not modified it.
Right, and we intentionally supported the House. I think those are just great programs and they are so beneficial and we benefit, the state benefits very much more than this investment. It's a very low investment.
But
I
it
understand what you're
absolutely,
saying.
but the 50,000 would maybe be,
Yeah,
maybe 1 or 2 projects and you can reconsider funding it, increasing it back
Next
next year.
because my feeling is that 3.1 million, we're not gonna do that every year. Not at all for housing. So at least I don't see that
Correct,
as a.
so maybe, and so maybe some of this, reducing the grants helps support that concept.
Right.
I'll let you and your committee figure that one
Thank
out.
you.
So the next one, this is really an important project. It's not funded until FY 27, so in section 2, line 8. We have talked about multiple years about the firing range. This is $200,000 in 27.
Wait, section 2, line 8,
Section 2, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, section 2, line 8.
okay,
The academy, the academy firing range. So you've given us some planning money in 27. This is something that we know, first of all, we're not even gonna touch this project until 27, and we know we have to go through the budget adjustment on this bill. Maybe we really need 300,000. But this is an item that we're saying to you, that we could reassign this money, knowing we would be coming back in budget adjustment with an amount there.
Okay.
And the last item, is line 15 in 27. Now you've already in 27, we need to do 32 Cherry Street, but, taking half of the 500, like 250 and leaving half of it, we would still be able to advance with what we have in 26. There's a high possibility in 27, we may need more money for this project. So you've got a little bit of flexibility with that appropriation. And we're a little behind schedule. And when you ask me a little, I can't tell you if that's a week or 2 weeks. So I came up with more. If you took every one of my suggestions, you have more than 1.1 million.
That is really helpful.
Well, I've got 5, so I've got 6, so I got 11, I got 1, hold on, 2, 3. I came up with about 1.5. 70, something that you've got some flexibility with, if you consider Bennington, the cultural grants, the fire academy at 32 Cherry Street. So you got a little bit of flexibility
In
there.
both years of the cultural grant.
Well, that's how you get it
Yeah.
right. If you take out,
Oh,
if you
both
don't do
years.
both years, then you're at about 1.1, 1.2.
All right, which is much more palatable.
And the small amounts, sometimes actually, and again, I'm just gonna bring in my experience, when we start doing these small amounts, it feels odd and it feels like you're nickeling and diming. But on a cash flow and the intent and the integrity of the program, they're all gonna move forward with everything that we just talked about. And the majority, except for one, the 300,000 in 26 is in 27. So, Madam Chair and Committee, you have the opportunity to restore, or we may, I think the existing members know that we'll put a 2-year capital bill together and we'll come in with our estimates on our out years. We advance that project and the money you give us in 26, and we may have a revised number. And we're coming in and asking for a budget adjustment because, and I think, other things come up. So it's part of our process.
Mhm. So. On the Bennington Battle Monument, are you going to go talk with someone?
I wanna
to figure out-
understand, I mean, I do, Joe actually is who I wanna talk to. He's in White River. He went down to do a court building meeting, so. I'm not sure if he's back yet. When I get over there, if he's there, I'll chat with him. And and I wanna understand, I think from looking at the spreadsheet, the testimony I know. And what we were looking at, we kind of thought. I don't know if we can spend the money. I honestly don't know, and I need to hear from my team on that.
So if we do the,
And was that in 26 or 27? In 26. So if you left that one and you went to the list, you consider the grants for the 2 years,
let's do the
6,
grants for the
7,
1
8.
year.
9, 10. And Cherry Street at 250, we're almost at 1.1 million.
Right, well, the 300 and the 450 on page 1, I'm just kind of doing it by pages. Page 1. To me has the 200,000 and the 250. So
Yeah, so there's 450.
450. And then. Not looking at the BBM. 300,000 for just the first year.
That's 750.
So 750, I think I'm fine with those. I still need 400,000, right, cause we need 1.1, do we need 1.1?
Yeah, 400,000.
Yeah,
What,
So-
I'm sorry, what do we? What do
we're
you,
trying to pay for the courthouse.
all right, without doing without
No,
fencing
no,
or?
no, just maybe, slimming it down. And looking at what actually needs to be done. Cause the 525. Is way more than is needed for fencing.
But what about, did we do the two?
No, I understand, but I'm saying the other things that are
We don't
intended,
even know if
Is it
the
not
525
even on the
is accurate or not.
right, so we,
Yeah, what about, Madam Chair, have we talked about the 275? Of the fire apparatus that nobody's asked for?
no, but they gave us the money for that, that was a wash.
That was in the House budget, I think.
Yeah, that was-
Yeah, and appropriations gave us the money for that, so that wouldn't save us,
Okay.
unless. I guess it,
It would be, that was part of the, discussion you had this morning with appropriations about getting 10 million instead of 7 million. And part of that would pay for that higher.
yeah,
So the 525,000 for the banks out. So what the request was to take the 419 that remained and reallocate.
Right.
Then the House added the 100 and some odd dollars to that, figuring they could use that much more. We didn't get specifics on what the more was. The only request was to reallocate 419.
But I don't wanna go into another senator's district and take money. I don't wanna do that. That's not even what I'm proposing. My proposing is that, just like I did last year with the courthouse in Newport. It just, we didn't need the money, and so I just said, boom, here you go. Fully knowing full well that we were gonna do that project, but at this point in time, it wasn't even in the case of not going to do it. It just, it wasn't gonna happen this year to sort of park that money. For me, even if it was in my district, it was foolishness.
So one of the things,
Part of
to
the
your
process is,
point,
the idea is that next year, we're gonna be replacing all of this, or at least we're gonna be looking at all of it.
Right.
With the eye toward whatever, we were looking at fiscal year 27 to take it out, so that we'd have that on. So we are doing that. So, sorry.
no, but, I don't know, this is your financial person, I mean, right now you're on a point where I know you're looking for $1.1 million. So not getting into the policy or disagreeing, with you. If you went to, if you just replaced it with the reallocation and didn't add the additional money to the house, that would give them 100,000. And it would keep it
Yeah.
on the books. That would be an option.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a plan, so instead of reallocating
No, no.
and saying there's nothing that could be, well, we come up with it. Senator, I understand the importance of having it there. I actually understand the importance of, that monument. And I just want to say this to committee, but we've really got to come up with a good, solid solution to keep that, national treasure.
Yeah, so you know, I know this is gonna be a multi-year project that's only just being started, so the
Yeah.
amounts that are gonna be asked for that are gonna be much higher later years. And I know
40 million reasons, I can think of 40 million reasons why it would be higher.
And I know not all of
Yeah.
it's gonna be coming from the states.
No,
And folks in Bennington know that too.
Yeah.
So,
so that could be just, keeping, not reallocating it, keeping the money for it. And looking at that 100,000 that the house added.
it was something about being able to use it though. And I'm not aware of sort of stay away. with it.
Yeah, I will still find out. I don't want to pick on poor Bennington any longer. Bennington's so.
Bennington's not poor.
No, Bennington,
Absolutely wonderful place and we
it is,
are not ever picked
not at all. So,
Is that because the camera's on? Is that what he?
no, and
No,
really, it's all about your.
I am going to be advocating for the Bennington Battle Monument and not tolerating any joke about it anymore.
So,
maybe.
fair enough,
Yes.
sir. So in going through the list
So,
of,
but just before we're done with that, when are we gonna find out information?
Well, right now, what we're talking about doing is moving around $100. And what the appropriations committee needs is what we're going to be agreeing on for from the cash fund.
But we could move bonded into cash.
No,
Right, what
Yeah.
I'm saying is
Well,
that by,
I misunderstood how you said that, so I want to be just correct on how,
but by 6 o'clock, they need to know what our cash
right.
allocations are.
Yeah,
And that'll be that,
yeah.
after tonight, then. But right now, we can move it back and forth. But I'm saying that tonight, they need to know.
Right.
We can move
And
the bond.
tomorrow, the bond gets to move back.
Right, so we can move, yes, we can move bonded into cash.
For instance, Madam Chair. If we were to, as just an example, if we're content with the cash the way it is, I could write it out to appropriations right now. They get what they need for the budget tonight, everything's good. Then everything we talked about finding this 1.1 million in the bonded, we can do all night and tomorrow, whatever. Once the cash is set, the cash is set. But again, we talked about if we were to move things from cash to bond to cash, we just need to know by 6 o'clock what that number is gonna be. Because once it's in the budget, then trying to change the cash is gonna be a whole different
Right,
stick to your business than moving the bond around the county.
and the White River Junction Courthouse is in the cash.
So we could take this extra $1.1 million in bonded and add it to that project just in a bonded line. Because projects can't have bonded and cash.
Right.
I see what you're saying,
They don't have to
okay,
have, they don't have to have just one or the other.
okay,
That's where,
so that's probably what we'll do.
I thought that's where we were going. We went through the amendments with John. We need to clarify the recovery house language. I thought we were all in agreement what we were gonna use cash for.
As long as we can pay for the courthouse.
And
That's,
then we're gonna figure out how we pay for the court.
Right.
Or rather what we cut from other places for this year.
Because right now we don't have any more cash to spend toward the courthouse. Unless you cut cash,
Did we
like
just,
from the 3 Vs.
I'm sorry, I thought we're gonna use it bonded, right?
Correct, that's what we're,
Okay.
that's what we're
All right.
trying to figure out. And by the way, Madam Chair, my running balance right now with what Commissioner Manoy had said. In section 2, the 450 plus 300 from the historic grants. I'm currently at 350. We need to find still. So that's where I was at.
350 we need to find out.
What about the three, so
That's more-
let's not get lost in our numbers, but what about the 350 that was sitting on the bottom line? On the last page?
You just have to reduce something for FY
Are
27,
you over
Okay.
350 or under?
under 350. I think, let me see, so
No.
It's not a negative number sitting there, it's a positive number.
So you would have it.
One-
with
We would have it right there. So we have it sitting right there, because that decision's already been made to reduce it someplace. Somebody's already made that decision for us, so that money's sitting there.
the problem is because it's a 2-year bill, will happen at FY 27 is you still have overspent by 350.
That's fine, we'll find it in 2027,
But then the bill would be out of balance.
and we will.
Okay, so so Scott, just looking at this, you need the 350 that's negative in your 27 has to come out of a project to have it be a zero.
Right.
Okay, so.
Yeah, it's 350, you're right,
Okay.
that we're looking for.
So now we just gotta find a $350,000 on a project someplace.
And you have no interest in the cultural grants going down by three.
I really don't,
I just wanted to add
yeah,
one more time. I may ask 3 more times, but.
I just think it shows good faith to have them increase.
Right, but once
Next
we
year.
increase, it's very hard to go back.
They never will go back.
That's,
I don't
nothing
want it
ever-
to go
nothing
back.
ever stops.
I
Okay.
think those are really, I mean, assuming that they're able to use them, but I think there's a huge amount of demand for those.
And technically,
Right.
Commissioner, we've already reduced FY 27 by 450 because the $200,000 is the firing range and half of the Cherry Street project, those were FY 27 dollars.
those were FY 27,
Correct.
right?
So the
And then the 300 is in 27 too for the grant.
I'm not sure, Madam Chair, the 300,000 for the grants in FY 26 or 27?
26.
Keep 27 at 300.
Well,
and
I don't,
reduce.
I guess I was thinking,
That's what I heard.
rather than have it go up and then down, I would rather it stay where it is now and then go up.
And I was thinking that if we took 50 out of it, you could increase it next year in budget adjustment to get it back to 300. Because once you set the 26, we can't go back, but if we take it out of the 27 and we get all of the 26 money out, you could add 50,000 to each program in budget adjustment. That's where I.
Yeah. But then that's money that we need to
Fine.
find. Yeah, I would rather.
Well, everything that we're touching, we're going to have to find.
No, right, well, this one would be just a reduction if we did it in FY 26. And it's not a reduction to the folks who are doing it because it's,
It doesn't exist yet.
yeah,
No, I had to just.
But in order for the 2 years to be balanced, we'll have to find 3/5 on both sides, one way or the other. That may confuse you. We keep looking for 350, that's my advice.
No matter what.
well, we're
year.
going to talk to,
If you're taking 100.
we're still talking about the Bennington Battle Monument, right?
Then you see 250.
Like 350 from that possibly.
I definitely don't want to do that, but, we're gonna find some more information because my understanding is that it could be used by ACCD, but I don't have details.
Okay.
on it, and I'm actually looking for.
So that's what I'm confused about, unless you're allocate, so we do their construction projects, but and their major maintenance, I think it also flows through, they do their own major maintenance. So I don't know if you're allocating it to their major maintenance pot.
I thought it was like planning and stuff. Planning
So
and
we
design.
usually oversee those contracts and do that, so I am a little concerned about the center, but I just want to get
No, I-
clear on that.
Yeah, so let's,
But,
I'm surprised to think about all that.
so,
so that's really fundamental because,
do you see any other ones, Will? Is there anything that stands out to you?
I'm continuing to look, Commissioner, but I'll be sure to speak up.
The only other choice you have is to look at additional 27 and say, sort of what we've done. That, and I'm just looking, are there any other projects that we know?
what about the Big E?
I would, the Big E, we actually go through that money really quickly, Senator, and make
Okay.
those renovations.
Okay,
So the Big E, I think, is very, very critical.
I mean, for 27, I'm not
So
saying
the
that it's
only other
not.
one, so I'm looking at line 4. We need to do our statewide 3-acre parcel stormwater compliance. We don't have a choice. And we cannot delay this. However, you could note that you're giving less money because we're not gonna spend the 1.1 million.
In 27.
No, we're not gonna spend the 1.1 in 26, right? So I can only spend the 1.5.
I'm sorry, tell me which 1.1 are you not gonna spend it for?
I'm gonna spend it, but I don't, so you could look at on line 4, the 1.1. For 27, you could reduce by a little, knowing that you've got to find the money to put back there next year.
Right,
Because we have to comply with these.
and that's a good one right there.
And I'm not advancing the work of the 1.1 until fiscal year 27. The way the capital bill is written, I can't pre-spend the 27 money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm looking at it. This is compliance. We must do this. We don't have a choice. So
Yeah.
if you take from that, you're funding a portion of it. you're replacing it. So we've got a little bit of flexibility with it. It's not my preference. I think I gave you my preferences based on what I know about a project, but this project, you've got to leave some in there, but we have to come back. So we'll be, with this proposal, if you took money from that, from the 32 Cherry, from the fire, we know in 27 that we've got to make those projects whole again when we come back to budget adjustment.
Oh, firing range. That's what you meant, right? When you say the fire, that's the firing
No.
range.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The line eight.
Right,
Right.
so there's a little bit of wiggle room in line 4 that we talked
And what
about.
about, Commissioner, how is, Mr. Sheets doing on his, because he was behind spending dollars. Is he caught up as far as spending his dollars?
He's not quite caught up. But things can always ebb and flow. I've been actually working with him on spending it, just like my statewide security. All of those, I'm heavily engaged with my directors and moving their money. So my goal next year, you're not gonna have a whole lot to reallocate. That's the other thing. So we've got to be really sensitive on where it's coming from.
And if we do one that we know we have to do.
That one is that
Next year, we're gonna have an argument.
That one will actually kind of advance.
As long as we have funding,
And we're doing
because that's the
that,
other thing, is
what
the
we keep doing.
bonding amount is set. That we want them to increase it. And we already have a negative. Next year.
So how would that, how are you came with that? Based on those numbers, what did you?
I was just looking at. If we were to take line 4, take 100,000 from that, just to trim a little bit. Bennington. 100,000, not just, that was what the house had added, just. Out of curiosity, throwing it out there, not suggesting, and then. That would be 200,000, so now I'm looking at just 150,000. David Sheets is 50,000, then he was looking for 100. One thing is the Bennington, was it the Bennington project of the 3 Bs? One of them had 1.1 million, maybe only do one instead of 1.1. That might get you 100,000, so that's the only other thing I can think of,
And so that's 300,000.
but that's cash, so we'd have to be very careful about what we do with the cash. Because we need to tell finance or operations.
We appreciate from the administration getting some of the cash back. I think you understand our policy and how we are looking at what we want to do with cash. So I would rather keep those 3 projects that we asked for and with your support and the cash and maybe try to not muck with that.
With the 3 housing projects?
Yes, yeah, and also we, and you have increased the cash. It's not quite where we were, but it's better, and we actually appreciate that, Madam Chair. So we're here to work with you. So I would take the 2 from the would you consider? We could maybe do statewide create a parcel for 850,000 in FY 27. What would that?
Is
give
that
us?
the whole 350?
Does that get us there?
Yes.
Yeah. That does concern me, and I mean, we can do that, but
If you do that.
we have to get that back.
We do, but the money you're
Have to
giving
get
us in
it back.
26 starts the work that we have to done based on our priority.
Right.
And so we have to get that done, absolutely. But everything on our list, we have to get done, right?
Right. But that is a path forward, and again, it's something that has to get done, the money has to be found. Budget adjustment, or it's as they spoke, they knew coming in that the amount of monies that we bonded for in this first biennium was gonna be lower. And that they would be looking to increase that amount. We're looking to do that. Right, maybe,
No
but,
guarantee, but
right,
that was,
but,
that was
right,
conversation.
nothing's guaranteed, right? None of it's guaranteed.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get
Well-
it to a number that we can live with.
And the bonding isn't for cash things, and this is what we're talking about, for cash.
We're there if we wanna be.
Right. How far along,
Okay, you only need to
Commissioner?
find $100,000. Oh, actually, we do have 100,000 if you choose to just do the reallocation and not add the 100,000 for Bennington.
Right.
Let the house.
Just leave the money, leave the money from Bennington, so it sits there and just don't add what they had added to it.
Or we take 100,000 from someone else.
And Commissioner,
Yeah,
or send it to, I'm just gonna show you the
oh,
time.
I would appreciate it.
Does that,
Sure.
does that ring a bell? You know, it is from BGS.
It's from October 24 now. I've never, that has not
This
been
is-
shared with me. And this is what we put in our capital plan, Senator, and working with the administration because of the cost.
Yep.
And the demands on the bill, we had decided not to advance this until we figure out, can we get some federal dollars to support the project? So ensuring the 400 and ensuring the reallocation, which is not a bad idea. I'm gonna say to the committee, and I wish I put in the capital bill. Well, starting with that, I understand the importance of leaving that and redirecting to make sure it can just be used to maintain the monument for what we need, right? And, and then. Okay. I, we're nickeling and diming. It's killing me.
we are,
We really are. We're looking for $100,000.
okay, tell me where we're, because I have us at 750, how do we get up?
Oh, I gotta know. So if
Where's
you-
the 250?
If you take, you ready?
Yeah,
If you take line 4, column N, and reduce that to 850,
okay, so that's how we got
you
it.
get 250 there. You get 300 from your cultural grant,
Mhm.
and you get a total of 450, which is we delay the design on the firing range, and we reduce 32 Cherry Street. That is $1 million.
For, with 4 things. So,
Yep,
so line 4, we moved that from 1.1 in FY 27 to 850,
yep, and
850,000.
then our next line is line 15.
I thought line 8, firing range,
Oh, I'm sorry, I passed right over that one. Yep, we would
and we take that whole amount.
take that whole amount. It wasn't the governor's recommend, we are delaying it. But it's not, here's the thing, it was in our 27, and so we can find a way to come right in 27. So that's line 8.
Mhm.
Then you go to line 15, and that 500,000 you could reduce to 200.
50 is what I had.
Yes. And then section,
The historic preservation grants, right?
no, cultural.
So I mean, that's where the,
Yes, so section 5, starting on line 44. So you want to do FY 26, you said, or FY
correct,
27?
no, 26.
So you would take column L. Items lines 44 through 51. And reduce that, each of those by 50,000.
Yeah, and that actually, that's significantly negative to me, just so you know that,
52 to the agriculture.
because those are really
Yeah.
good, helpful grants for folks who
Yeah,
don't
that's
have
why I
the
did
money.
line 51.
And they're very,
Right, the idea is that we're, oh, why would we take it from? Fiscal year 26 instead of 27.
Because we're not gonna go down. We're not gonna have it be higher and then lower.
I'm looking at all of this, says we're gonna keep putting all that.
I don't think that's,
Release that one.
necessary. well, it'd be great, but we're also having incredibly. The federal government, who knows what's gonna happen? We may need to fund Medicaid. I don't wanna assume.
Or you're assuming,
Oh, I have to at some,
well.
but this,
no,
but,
You're
but
assuming, so let's not make broad statements and then backtrack off of what you said.
I hope it's not true, but right now they're looking at,
Well, I don't think that they are.
Well,
That's your interpretation.
it is one.
Can I? 149. Actually, I mean, see that 149. I take it back. Never mind.
But don't get us all too stuck.
Yeah,
And then pull it back.
Yeah, we've already given you that.
Yeah,
I know, I was thinking that, yeah, that's great.
Or is that our cash?
All right.
Yeah.
So,
So with what we just. So we're not in agreement on the. What are they?
You still need to find 100,000.
But we're waiting on.
And that leaves, that's 100, you have $1 million without touching the Bennington Monument
So we weren't
proposal.
in agreement on section 5. Is that what I was just hearing?
Why don't we take $100,000 from the Newport, Correctional Center? To me, no, we already did that. That's in, I'm sorry, that's reallocation. All right.
are we gonna talk to Laura about what she's able to do with the 500,000 next year?
So, I apologize. Did you take, was part of that million, the Bennington's?
No.
Can we,
So can we do this? Take 100,000 from the Bennington, drop that down from the 550 to 4. We added something about that. And there's your 1.2. I mean, 1.1.
Yeah.
You have 400,000 for 50.
Why wouldn't we,
Do you understand what I'm saying, Russ? Is take it from the Bennington, take 100,000 from the Bennington, then we're there.
or if you don't wanna do that, and I get where Rob's at, why don't we take 100,000 from the Vermont Veterans Home? And make it 1.4.
Yeah, I don't know what their, so Vermont Veterans Home, apparently when they get federal dollars, BGS used to oversee those projects.
Right.
And there was a shift in policy. So when it's federal dollars, we don't oversee it. So I can't speak to what their what section is that, sir?
That's section, 6, line 59.
I cannot speak on,
This design and construction for renovation of the American unit, 1.5. If they're gonna run short, you know damn well we're gonna jump right back in there, but that isn't gonna do the project. That's just design and the start of construction.
Or even 50 and fund 50 elsewhere.
Yeah, or even 50 but there's $100,000 sitting right there.
that's in
I don't-
cash, that problem with that's in your cash, that's gonna change your cash line.
Well, it'll be fine. We have time to change our cash line.
no, we don't. That's what we have to do.
No, we have to do it tonight. Right.
Right.
That's what it's right there.
We still have time.
We still have time. We're not up to 6 o'clock yet, so we can take 100,000, Madam Chair, out of that.
Yeah, I see them as being not flush. And
But they're gonna be flush. They're not gonna spend the 1.5.
they have, their facilities are,
I'm not saying that we're gonna
Really?
cancel, not saying we're gonna cancel the project. We're just gonna
No.
borrow a little bit of money from them.
I understand, but they will come upon things, they'll expect something and then it ends up being worse. I mean, their
We're not
facility,
killing the project.
Well,
We're
so
just-
what he's talking about isn't actually for their existing facilities, it's for the design and construction of the.
New.
Right, so other than one.
Yeah, tearing down the.
And all it is borrowing $100,000 for them. We're not gonna leave them stranded there. They're not gonna spend the 1.5
In a year.
without us having to give them more money anyways.
It's design and construction.
Yeah, but they're not gonna be able to do that for the whole 1.5. This is the start of it.
Yeah, I don't, I think it is the beginning of the plan. I don't think it's complete design and construction.
Madam Chair, the only thing I will add is that was reallocated money because they had design and planning for B and C wings.
And they didn't use it.
That was 1.5, which they took to then put to A wing. So I don't know how far along they might be with that idea. But that 1.5 was a reallocation from them from before, just throwing that out there.
Right.
Do you know, Scott, or Will, do you know, is the 1.5 being used to match federal dollars? To draw down federal dollars in this proposal?
I don't know if the entirety of it is, but I know that at least part of it is.
Let's see what they offered on. Yeah, they didn't speak specifically to that. It spoke to the other two projects as projects that would be drawing down 65%. And that was already cut total by 100.
Yeah. They're not even sure they can do the project with what they have. Is my recollection. They're hopeful. And they already got cut. Can we, has anyone asked for Laura to come and talk to us? Can we get Laura Treasurer? I can try.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's take 10 minutes until